Maya stepped onto the crowded bus with a weary sigh. Her feet ached after a long day of work at a department store where she had spent hours on her feet, assisting customers and organizing shelves. The stuffy atmosphere of public transport, mixed with the smell of sweat and the murmur of voices, felt like an extension of her exhausting day. She squeezed between people who looked at her with indifference, each immersed in their own thoughts, as if the outside world didn't exist. As Maya tried to find a spot to hold on to, her eyes landed on an elderly man who was precariously balancing while holding onto the bus pole. His graying hair was disheveled, and the deep wrinkles on his face told stories of a life lived with challenges and triumphs. Maya's heart tightened as she noticed he looked truly tired, as if every movement was a battle. Without thinking twice, she approached him and, with a gentle smile, said, "Would you like to sit down, sir?" The old man looked at her in surprise, as if he hadn't noticed her presence before. After a moment of hesitation, his face lit up with a sincere smile. "Oh, my young lady, I couldn't accept such a kind gesture, but," he hesitated, looking around the crowded bus, "if you insist, I would be very grateful." Maya gestured for him to take a seat, watching as he sat down with a sigh of relief. The spot next to him was empty, and she decided to remain there, even if standing. The bus continued on its way, swaying along the city's uneven streets. The old man, now seated, seemed more relaxed. "My name is Harold, and I am very grateful to you, young lady. It's not every day we find such generous people," he said, his warm tone contrasting with the coldness of the environment. "I'm Maya. It's really nothing special. We can all help each other, can't we?" She replied, her smile widening. "That's true. The world needs more people like you." The old man looked out the window, watching the city pass by. "Do you always do this? Give your seat to the elderly?" Maya laughed softly. "Actually, it's not something I do all the time, but today I felt I needed to." He watched her intently, as if assessing not just her words, but her essence. "You have a good heart, Maya. It's rare to find young people like you these days." The comment made her a bit embarrassed, but it also made her feel valued. The conversation flowed naturally as the bus continued its journey. They talked about the day, the city, and dreams. Maya learned that Harold had been a teacher and loved to tell stories about his experiences. After a few stops and many laughs, the bus reached Maya's destination. She said goodbye to the old man, but before getting off, Harold held her hand, gently pulling her back. "One moment, my young lady." He searched his pockets and took out a small piece of paper. With a pen that looked like it had seen better days, he quickly wrote something down. "Here, take this." Maya looked at the note he handed her. It was a phone number. "What is this?" she asked, intrigued. "It's my number. If you ever need anything or just want to chat, don't hesitate to call me. I would love to hear more about you." She hesitated, unsure how to react. It was unusual to receive such a gesture from a stranger. "Thank you, Mr. Harold. That's very kind of you." "It's nothing. I just hope you won't be a stranger for long, because you have a light that deserves to be shared," he replied, winking. Maya got off the bus, still holding the note, while the old man watched her with a smile on his face. The afternoon was beginning to turn into night, and the cool breeze of the city felt refreshing. On her way home, her thoughts revolved around the conversation with Harold. She had never met someone so kind and wise. Upon arriving at her small, simple apartment, Maya tossed her bag in a corner and sat down at the table, the note in her hands. The phone numbers seemed to pulse, almost calling out to her. Curiosity consumed her. What if he needs help? What if I'm missing an opportunity? She thought as the minutes passed slowly. Finally, the decision was made. With her heart racing, she picked up her cell phone and dialed the number. The line rang a few times before being answered. "Hello?" Mr. Harold's warm voice came through the other end, and Maya felt a flutter in her stomach. "Mr. Harold? It's me, Maya, the young lady who gave you her seat on the bus." "Oh, Maya. What a pleasure to hear your voice. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. I thought I'd call, as you suggested. He laughed, a comforting sound that seemed to fill the space between them. I'm glad you did. Sometimes, life gives us unexpected opportunities. And you know, I could use someone like you around. How so? Maya asked, intrigued. Well, I'm a bit older and might need help with some things. I don't want to be a burden, but perhaps you could assist me with a few tasks. And, of course, tell me more about yourself. Maya's heart raced. A job? She could hardly believe she was being invited for this, especially by someone she had just met. Can I know a bit more about what you need? Of course. Let's set a day to talk more. I can offer a very generous salary, much higher than what you're currently earning. What do you think? Maya was silent for a moment, absorbing the proposal. A generous salary? This could change everything for her. But at the same time, there was something intriguing about the offer. She didn't know much about Harold, other than he was a kind old man. I need to think a bit, but I'm interested. No rush, my young lady. Just let me know when you're ready. And I would love to know more about you, your aspirations, your dreams. Harold's tone was gentle and encouraging, and Maya found herself smiling. Thank you, Mr. Harold. I'll think about it carefully. Great. I'll be waiting for your call. See you soon, Maya. See you soon. She hung up the phone, feeling a little dizzy. What had just happened? A new opportunity was in sight, and more than that, she had made a new friend. The idea of connecting more with that elderly man intrigued her and, at the same time, made her excited. The day that seemed to have been ordinary and exhausting was now turning into a new page in her life. Maya sat at her small dining table, the note with Mr. Harold's number still in her hands. The soft light from the lamp illuminated her face, revealing a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The day had been long and tiring, but the thought of a new opportunity left her restless. The job offer seemed like a dream, something she never imagined receiving. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. What if it's not legitimate? What if he's just an old crazy man, she thought, biting her lower lip. However, an inner voice encouraged her, but what if it's real? What if it's the chance you've been waiting for? With her heart racing, Maya picked up her phone and hesitated for a moment. The number seemed so simple, yet it carried an enormous weight. Finally, she dialed. The ringing sounded on the other end, and anticipation wrapped around her like a warm blanket. The first ring, the second, and then, the warm voice of Mr. Harold echoed from the other side. Hello? Is that you, my young heroine? Maya involuntarily smiled upon hearing that familiar tone. Hi, Mr. Harold. It's me, Maya. Sorry for calling so late. Don't worry. I was expecting your call. I'm so glad you called. How are you feeling today? I'm a little nervous, actually. The day was long and, well, you know how it is, Maya replied, her voice revealing the insecurity she felt. I do know. Days can be heavy, but I have a proposal that might lighten your life a bit. Are you still interested in learning more about the caregiver position? She felt a bit more relaxed hearing his confidence. Yes, I am. You mentioned a salary, a very high salary. Exactly. The salary is 10 times what you're earning now. I need someone who can help me, not just physically but also emotionally. I am an elderly man, and loneliness can be a heavy burden. I understand. But why me? Aren't there many people who could do this job? Yes, there are many. But I saw something special in you, Maya. Your kindness in offering me your seat on the bus, your smile. I want you to know that means a lot to me. Maya's heart warmed with Mr. Harold's words. Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you. But what about the job? What exactly would I have to do? Basically, I need someone who can take care of me, prepare some meals, keep me company, and if necessary, help me with some daily activities. It's a position of trust, and I promise you'll have all the support you need. And, of course, I won't leave you without fair compensation. Maya pondered. It was a unique opportunity, but it also carried the responsibility of caring for another person. And could I start immediately? Yes, if you're ready. I'd like to have you here tomorrow, if possible. We can talk more about expectations and what I hope from you. Maya looked out the window, watching the city lights flickering in the darkness. A wave of determination washed over her. Okay, Mr. Harold. I accept. I'll be there tomorrow. That's wonderful, Maya. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better and starting this new phase. Have a good night, and don't worry. You'll do great. Hanging up the phone, Maya felt a mix of relief and excitement. She didn't know exactly what to expect, but the idea of a new beginning thrilled her. What once seemed distant now felt tangible, almost within reach. She sat back down at the table, still holding the note. The number was more than just a contact. It was the bridge to a new life. The next morning, the sun rose brightly, and Maya woke up with a racing heart. She had a quick meal, dressed carefully, and looked at herself in the mirror. The young woman looking back at her seemed a little more confident. You can do this, Maya. It's just a job. Take care of it as you would care for anyone, she murmured to herself. When she arrived at Mr. Harold's house, she was impressed by the beauty of the place. It was a cozy residence, with a small well-kept garden in front. Colorful flowers and a stone pathway added a touch of magic to the environment. Maya walked up the entrance steps and knocked on the door, feeling butterflies in her stomach. Hello, Maya. I'm so glad you came. Mr. Harold welcomed her with a warm smile. He was dressed simply but elegantly, and his presence radiated an aura of tranquility. Good morning, Mr. Harold. I'm excited to get started. Great. Let's begin with a tour of the house, so you can familiarize yourself with the space. He guided her through the house, showing each room and sharing stories about every item they encountered along the way. This here is my living room. I used to spend hours reading here. Do you like to read? Yes, I love it. I've always thought books have the power to take us to other worlds. Exactly. Do you have a favorite book? Maya hesitated. I think The Little Prince is one of my favorites. The message about friendship is beautiful. Oh, an excellent choice. Friendship is indeed one of the most valuable things in life. As they walked, Maya realized that Mr. Harold was not just a lonely old man, but someone who carried a life full of experiences and memories. The house walls were filled with framed photographs. Some showed a young Harold with a smiling woman, others with children and grandchildren. With each image, Maya felt a stronger connection to the man who was now under her care. Who are those people in the photos? She asked, pointing to a particular image where Mr. Harold looked younger, radiant, next to a woman with curly hair. Oh, that was my wife, Margaret. She was the light of my life. And those children are my grandchildren. They have always been an important part of me. Do they visit you often? Maya inquired, interested. Unfortunately, not as much as I would like. Life is busy, and everyone has their own responsibilities. But I keep in touch with them by phone. They are good young people, always concerned about me. Maya felt a pang in her heart. Mr. Harold's loneliness was palpable, but she also sensed that he was a strong person, dealing with it in the best way possible. If you need anything, I'm here to help, she said, determined to do her best. I know, my dear. And that means a lot to me. After the tour, they sat at the table for a simple breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and Maya prepared some toast with jam. As they ate, they talked about trivial matters, but also about deeper issues in life. Do you believe we can make a difference in people's lives, even with small gestures? Mr. Harold asked, looking into her eyes. Absolutely. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness can change someone's day. I feel that every time I help a customer at the store or even when I give up my seat on the bus. Exactly, my young lady. Kindness is a powerful force. And you've shown that from the very first moment. The breakfast stretched longer than expected, and Maya realized she was having fun. Mr. Harold's stories were captivating, and he had a special way of making every moment feel important. When the clock struck the hour to start work, Maya felt ready to face the challenges ahead. The connection that was forming between them was more than a professional relationship. It was the beginning of a friendship that promised to be meaningful and transformative. That morning was just the start of a journey that would change their lives forever. Maya knew she had made the right choice. Life was presenting her with a new direction, and she was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. Maya arrived at Mr. Harold's house with her heart racing. The morning sun lit up the streets, and she felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation in her chest. As she approached the entrance, she noticed that the house was charming, with a well-kept little garden that exuded the fragrance of freshly bloomed flowers. The walls were adorned with climbing plants, and a symphony of birds sang in the background, as if they were the hosts of that special morning. When she rang the doorbell, she was greeted by an elderly woman, who smiled warmly. "You must be Maya. Mr. Harold is eager to meet you," she said, opening the door and allowing Maya to enter. The interior of the house was a reflection of Mr. Harold's rich life, full of stories. The walls were decorated with framed photographs, showcasing moments from his life, from his youth to old age. In each picture, there was a story, and Maya felt immediately intrigued. There was a coffee table with various books stacked on it, and the smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air. "Right this way, dear," said the woman, guiding Maya to the living room. Mr. Harold was sitting in an armchair, a smile on his face and a welcoming look in his eyes. He raised his hand and waved at her. "Maya, what a pleasure to see you," he exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine happiness. "Good morning, Mr. Harold." "It's a pleasure to be here," Maya replied, trying to hide the shyness she felt. She approached and greeted him with a firm handshake. "Please, have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair beside him. "Today is a special day. Are you ready to start your new journey?" Maya nodded, a nervous smile forming on her lips. "I'm ready. What would you like me to do first?" "Oh, you'll see, it's nothing complicated. In fact, the first task is just to chat. I like to get to know the people who take care of me," Mr. Harold said, winking. "And I'm sure you have many stories to share." Maya settled into the chair, and soon found herself relaxing under Mr. Harold's light and fluid conversation. He began to tell her about his youth, his adventures and misadventures. "When I was your age, life was a grand adventure. I used to travel around the country, discovering new places and fascinating people," he said, his eyes shining with nostalgia. "One day, I took a train to the countryside just to see the cherry blossoms in bloom. And do you know what I found? A small town full of wonderful people." "Wow, that sounds amazing. I've never traveled much." "The most I've done is go to the beach with my friends," Maya commented, admiring Harold's passion for exploration. He laughed. "Life is full of opportunities, my young friend. Sometimes, all we need to do is gather the courage to step out of our comfort zone." "Have you ever thought about traveling?" "Sometimes, yes. But with work, it's hard to save money," Maya replied, a little sad as she remembered her financial limitations. "Oh, you're young, Maya. Money isn't everything. What matters is what you do with the time you have. And I'm sure you're capable of great things," Mr. Harold said, his voice full of encouragement. Maya smiled, feeling a bit more at ease. The conversation flowed naturally, and she began to share a little about her life, her aspirations, and the challenges she faced. Mr. Harold listened attentively, his gaze always interested. "You know, Maya, life is a tapestry of experiences. Each thread we add to it tells a story, and yours is still being woven. Don't forget that every challenge is a disguised opportunity," he said with a wise smile. Maya was impressed by his insight. I'd never thought of it that way. Sometimes, it feels like I'm stuck in an endless cycle, working and just trying to survive. But you're right, I need to look beyond that. Exactly, Mr. Harold replied. And now that you're here, we can create new memories together. How about some music? He slowly got up and went to a shelf that held a collection of vinyl records. Carefully, he took out a record and placed it on the turntable. As the music began to play, the atmosphere filled with a soft, nostalgic melody. Mr. Harold started to sway gently in his chair, and Maya couldn't help but smile. Do you like music, Maya? I love it. I used to sing in the school choir. But I haven't done that in a long time, she replied, a bit embarrassed. You should get back to it. Music has an incredible power to connect us and bring us joy. Let's sing together one day, what do you think? He suggested, winking again. That would be fun. I'd love to, Maya replied, her confidence growing with the idea. They continued to talk and listen to music, and throughout the day, Maya felt at home. Time passed quickly, and soon it was approaching lunchtime. Mr. Harold suggested they prepare something together. Do you know how to cook? He asked, a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. A little, but I'm not a chef, Maya replied, laughing. Don't worry. I'm a great teacher. Let's make a simple but delicious dish. How about vegetable soup? He suggested. Maya agreed, and together they went to the kitchen. As they chopped the vegetables, Mr. Harold shared stories about his mother, who was an exceptional cook. She always said that food made with love has a special taste, he remembered, skillfully chopping onions. That's true, Maya said as she added the vegetables to the pot. The food my grandmother made always tasted better than anything else. Ah, the wisdom of grandmothers. They have a special way of making everything tastier, Mr. Harold agreed. The kitchen quickly filled with pleasant aromas, and the conversation flowed as they cooked. Maya felt at home, surrounded by Mr. Harold's kindness and wisdom. With each shared laugh, with each story told, their friendship grew stronger, creating a bond she never imagined she could have. When the soup was ready, they sat down at the table, and Mr. Harold made a toast. To new friendship and the memories we will still create, he said, raising his glass. Maya smiled, feeling grateful for having crossed paths with such a special man. To friendship, she replied, lifting her glass to join him. As they ate, Maya couldn't help but notice a painting on the wall that intrigued her. It was a framed portrait of a happy family, all smiling and hugging. Mr. Harold noticed her curious gaze, and, for a moment, his smile faded. It's a lovely family, Maya commented, trying to break the silence that had formed. Yes, those were good times, he replied, looking away. Maya sensed there was more to that story, something he wasn't ready to share. But for now, she respected his space and decided that, with time, perhaps he would feel comfortable enough to open his heart. The day passed quickly, and at the end, as they tidied up the kitchen, Maya realized how transformative that first day had been. Mr. Harold was not just a lonely elderly man, he was a man full of life, stories, and wisdom. And she was excited to discover more about him in the days to come. The days turned into weeks, and the friendship between Maya and Mr. Harold blossomed at a pace the young woman had never imagined. The conversations in the cozy home of the elderly man became a refuge for both. Maya dedicated herself to caring for him, but also to discovering the nuances of his life. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the room as they sat at the table, where sunlight filtered through the linen curtains. You know, Maya, Mr. Harold began, stirring his cup with a spoon, my life has been filled with ups and downs, but I've always found joy in the little things. Like music. Music? Maya smiled, leaning forward, excited. Do you play an instrument? Actually, I used to play the piano. It was one of my great passions. Music has always been a foundation in my life. He looked to the side, as if revisiting old memories. I can still play a little, if you'd like to hear. Please, Maya said, clapping her hands enthusiastically. I'd love to hear you play. Mr. Harold slowly got up, leaning on the chair before heading to the small piano in the living room. Maya watched as he sat down and skillfully began to play a soft melody. The notes danced in the air, filling the space with a nostalgic feeling. Maya closed her eyes, allowing the music to envelop her. Each chord seemed to tell a part of Mr. Harold's story, his joys and sorrows. When the music ceased, Maya applauded, her eyes shining. "You're amazing. Why don't you play more? We should do this more often." Maya, life is about priorities. Sometimes we set our passions aside in the name of other responsibilities. He smiled, but there was a shadow in his eyes. "But you're right. I should play more." The conversation flowed to other topics, and amid laughter and memories, Maya began to feel that Mr. Harold was more than just an elderly man she cared for. He had become a friend, a paternal figure she never knew she needed. One afternoon, while organizing office documents, Maya came across an old letter, yellowed with age. The envelope was addressed to a son Mr. Harold had never mentioned. Maya's heart raced. Curiosity overtook her. "Mr. Harold, can I ask about this?" Maya indicated the letter, hesitating. "Who is this, son?" Mr. Harold's gaze immediately dimmed, and he swallowed hard. "Oh, that's something we don't need to discuss, Maya," he replied, his voice a bit shaky. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude," Maya said, feeling guilty for bringing up a topic that seemed so sensitive. "I just thought it might be important to you." "It's just that some things are hard to talk about," he replied, looking away. "I was a father, but life's circumstances aren't always fair." The sadness was palpable in his words. "Please, don't worry about it." Maya felt a tightness in her chest. She wanted to understand, but she respected his space. "Of course, I won't insist," she said, trying to change the subject. "Would you like to listen to some jazz tonight? We could have a music night." Mr. Harold smiled, and that expression lit up his face. "That sounds wonderful, Maya. I'd love to." The days continued to pass, and their relationship deepened. They shared stories about their childhoods, dreams, and fears. Maya talked about her struggle to settle in the city, her future plans, and her desire to do something meaningful with her life. Mr. Harold, in turn, spoke about his youth, his adventures, and the sorrows that shaped him. On a particularly cold night, as the wind howled outside, Maya decided it was time to prepare a special dinner. She wanted to surprise Mr. Harold, so she made a warm soup and some homemade bread. The delicious aroma spread throughout the house, and she set the table with care. "Wow, Maya! What are you doing?" Mr. Harold asked, walking into the room with a surprised look. "It's a surprise." "I hope you're hungry," she replied, with a radiant smile. "Hungry? Always." He laughed, and seeing him so joyful lit up the atmosphere. They sat at the table, and Mr. Harold began to serve the soup. "You're a real chef, Maya. This is delicious." He took a spoonful, and his eyes closed in satisfaction. You know, food has a way of bringing people together. Every bite is a story, a shared moment. "You're right," Maya agreed, as she served herself. "Sometimes I wonder how life intertwines, how each person's stories cross. I never imagined that a simple act of kindness on the bus would lead me to this." "Sometimes, the greatest changes come from small gestures, my dear," he replied, with a thoughtful look. "You did something beautiful for me, and it changed not only my life but, believe me, yours too." After dinner, they settled on the couch, and Maya brought out a guitar she had found in the corner of the room. "Would you mind if I tried to play something?" she asked. "Of course. Let's hear you." Mr. Harold encouraged, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Maya strummed a few notes, and with a slightly hesitant voice, began to sing a song she had learned in childhood. Mr. Harold listened attentively, a smile on his face. When she finished, he applauded enthusiastically. "You have a beautiful voice, Maya. You should sing more often." Thank you, Mr. Harold. That means a lot to me, she replied, a bit shy. I only sing for fun. Singing is a way to express what's in your heart. Don't underestimate the power of your voice, he said. The music is a universal language. It can heal, bring joy, and unite people. Maya looked at Mr. Harold, admiring his wisdom. He was undoubtedly a man who understood life in a unique way. But the memory of that old letter still haunted her mind. The secrets he kept were like shadows dancing on the walls of the house, and she couldn't shake the desire to learn more about his past. One night, after a long conversation, Maya decided that regardless of what Mr. Harold said, she needed to know more about that lost son. Curiosity consumed her, and the thought that he might have a deeper story, a pain he didn't share, made her feel restless. Mr. Harold, she began, hesitantly, I know you don't want to talk about your son, but if you ever do, I'll be here to listen. He looked her in the eyes, and for a moment, the silence between them was so thick it could almost be cut. I appreciate that, Maya. It's just that, some wounds are hard to open. And some stories are more painful than people imagine. I understand, she murmured, feeling a lump in her throat. But know that you're not alone. I'm here for you. And so, their friendship continued to grow, as life moved on. Maya was determined to respect Mr. Harold's boundaries, but deep down, a seed of curiosity had been planted. What else might be hidden beneath the surface of the life of this man who had become so dear to her? The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink as Maya adjusted the pillow under Mr. Harold's head. The house was wrapped in a tender silence, only broken by the soft sound of his breathing, which, although still present, was becoming increasingly fragile. Over the past weeks, the old man's health had alarmingly deteriorated. Maya felt a mixture of worry and sadness, knowing that each moment they spent together held a special weight, like precious pages of a book she didn't want to end. Are you still here, my young lady? Mr. Harold opened his eyes with difficulty, a gentle smile forming on his wrinkled lips. I thought you would have run off to your life full of adventures. Maya smiled, holding his hand, which was warm and fragile. I would never leave you, Mr. Harold. You are an important part of my life now. Life is full of twists and turns, isn't it? He closed his eyes again, as if reflecting on his words. I remember when I was young, full of dreams. What I would have given to have more time to realize them. You still have time, Mr. Harold. You can share your stories, and that is a form of fulfillment. Maya felt a pressure in her chest, a tightness that made her want to cry, but she forced herself to keep her voice steady. Stories, yes, stories are important, but what really matters is what we do with the time we have. Sometimes, I wonder if I used mine in the best way possible. He looked at Maya with a glimmer of determination in his tired eyes. You remind me of a young woman I once met, full of hope and energy. I admired her greatly, but I lost touch with her. Life takes us down unexpected paths, doesn't it? Yes, that's true. But what matters is that we are here now, together. Maya felt a wave of emotions, a mixture of gratitude and sadness, as she watched Mr. Harold. He was more than a job to her. He had become a friend, a mentor, someone who made her feel important. What would you like to know, my young lady? I have many stories, but some are harder to tell than others. He paused, and Maya noticed the hesitation in his voice. I would like to know about your family, Mr. Harold. You mentioned once that you had a son. What happened to him? The question slipped from her lips, and Maya instantly regretted it, realizing she had touched on a wound. The old man took a deep breath, and the expression on his face changed. My dear son. He left us too soon. An accident I prefer not to remember. Sometimes, the pain of the past is too heavy to carry. He turned his gaze, watching the sunset through the window, as if seeking comfort in the colors of the sky. Maya felt a lump in her throat. I'm sorry, Mr. Harold. I didn't mean to make you remember something painful. Don't worry, Maya. Talking about him is, in a way to keep him alive. He will always be a part of me. A tear slid down the old man's face, and Maya, without thinking, wiped it away with her thumb. It was a simple gesture, but full of affection. I know it's difficult, but if you want, you can tell me about him. I'm here to listen. Maya's voice was soft, almost a whisper. Mr. Harold hesitated, but then began to speak, his voice a bit shaky. He was a wonderful boy, full of life and dreams. He always wanted to be an artist, you know? He would spend hours drawing and painting. I always encouraged him. But when the accident happened, everything changed. I couldn't cope with the loss. My wife couldn't either. We both lost ourselves in our grief, and the life we had together crumbled. Maya listened attentively, her heart aching for him. And you never painted again? She asked, remembering their previous conversations about art. No, not since then. Painting became too painful a reminder. I put it aside, as if I were storing the pain in a dark corner of the house. He looked at Maya, his eyes reflecting sadness and regret. But you, my young lady, you have talent. I see it in you. Don't let life stop you from pursuing your dreams. Maya felt touched. Thank you, Mr. Harold. I promise I will strive to follow my dreams. You inspire me to do so. And then, when I'm gone, will you continue to live and seek happiness? He asked, a slight smile forming, but his eyes betraying concern. Yes, I promise. But please don't think about leaving any time soon. Maya held his hand tightly, as if she could transmit a bit of her energy to him. Mr. Harold closed his eyes, and a look of peace took over his face. Life is a cycle, Maya. If I go, I want you to remember me fondly, but to move on. Happiness is a treasure we must seek every day. His words echoed in her mind as night approached. Maya knew that every moment they spent together was precious, and she wanted to cherish every word, every laugh, every tear. I promise, Mr. Harold. I will find happiness. And even if you are no longer here, I will always carry your lessons with me. Maya's voice was firm, with a determination she barely knew she had. And I, my young lady, will always be with you, in spirit. Just remember to dream and to love intensely. He squeezed her hand, and Maya felt a wave of warmth and affection sweep across the room. Time seemed to stand still as they shared that moment. The moonlight began to filter through the window, illuminating Mr. Harold's face, which now appeared more serene. Maya settled beside him, holding his hand, as night fell, aware that whatever happened, that connection would last forever. Maya was sitting in an austere room, with white walls and a long dark wooden table in front of her. The space was filled with folders and documents, but her mind was far away. Since Mr. Harold's death, sadness had wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, and even there, surrounded by lawyers and witnesses, she couldn't shake the image of the man who had become so important in her life. The memory of their conversations, laughter, and even the comfortable silences they shared haunted her. Miss Maya, are you ready to begin? Asked one of the lawyers, interrupting her thoughts. He was a middle-aged man, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, with a serious expression. Maya merely nodded, trying to gather her strength. The lawyer began to read the will in a clear, firm voice. As the words left his mouth, a sense of disbelief washed over her. Mr. Harold had left his entire fortune to her, an amount she could never have imagined. With this, Miss Maya becomes the sole heir to the assets of the late Mr. Harold, including properties, investments, and a significant sum of money, the lawyer continued. Maya felt her heart race. Should you wish, you may manage these assets or choose to sell them. Maya could hardly process the words. It was such a huge twist that it felt surreal. She remembered the conversations about simplicity and happiness she had with Mr. Harold, and now she found herself facing an immense responsibility. The fortune he left was not just a gift, it was a legacy that required care and consideration. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she murmured, looking at the papers in front of her as if they held the answers to her doubts. The lawyer, noticing her hesitation, spoke with empathy. It's normal to feel this way, Miss Maya. Mr. Harold trusted you. He saw in you a person with a generous heart and the ability to make a difference. That is something he always valued. Maya felt a wave of emotion as she heard those words. It was true. Mr. Harold believed in her, even in moments when she doubted herself. A part of her wanted to honor his memory, but the other part was scared of the magnitude of the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. Can I think about it? Maya asked, her voice trembling. I don't want to make hasty decisions. Of course, Miss Maya. The important thing is that you feel comfortable with your choice. Remember, fortune can be a burden, but it can also be an opportunity to do good in the world, the lawyer replied, with an encouraging look. After the meeting, Maya left the office with her head full of thoughts. The city pulsed around her, but everything felt distant and blurred. The noisy streets, the hurried people, all seemed insignificant in the face of the new reality she was facing. As she walked, memories of Mr. Harold flooded her mind. The afternoon spent together, the life lessons he shared, and especially the love he had for a lost son. What was that pain he carried? And why had he never spoken about it with her? These questions left her restless. Curiosity began to transform into determination. Maya decided she needed to learn more about Mr. Harold's life, especially about his son. The first thing she did was go home and search for information online. Hours passed as she researched and, little by little, a name began to emerge, Lucas, a young man who, according to old news, had died in a tragic accident years ago. The information was scarce, but there was something familiar about his face. It can't be, Maya thought, astonished. A distant memory surfaced in her mind, of a boy she had known in her childhood, someone who had always been kind and fun. Lucas. He was Mr. Harold's son. A wave of emotions washed over her, making her heart race. That boy who had been part of her life, though briefly, was now intertwined with the story of her adult life. Maya remembered how Lucas always talked about his father's love for him, how Harold took pride in his accomplishments. For Maya, this new revelation changed everything. How could she have been so naive? Mr. Harold was not just a lonely old man, but a man who carried deep wounds and memories of love and loss. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Hours passed like a blur as she pondered what to do with the inheritance and how to honor the memory of Mr. Harold and Lucas. With the fortune she now possessed, she had the opportunity to create something that united their legacies. The next morning, she woke up determined. She decided she would use the fortune to create a foundation. An institution that would support vulnerable youth, a space where they could find opportunities, education, and, above all, love. This idea filled her with hope and made her feel she was doing what Mr. Harold would have wanted. As she began to plan the foundation, Maya received an unexpected call. It was Mr. Harold's lawyer, informing her that there were more documents to discuss, including details about the property he owned. Maya's heart raced again. I hope this helps me understand his legacy better, she thought. When she arrived at the lawyer's office, Maya sat down and listened attentively. Mr. Harold had a very clear vision of what he wanted to do with his legacy. He always dreamed of creating a space that could help young people who, like his son, faced difficulties, the lawyer said, while showing Maya a blueprint for a building that Harold had planned. Maya couldn't believe it. Did he really want to do this? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, and he would like you to continue that dream. He believed you could make a significant difference in the lives of many people, the lawyer replied, smiling. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. It was as if Mr. Harold was there beside her, encouraging her to move forward. She knew there was a great responsibility in her hands, but there was also the chance to turn pain into hope. I will do this, Maya said, with determination. I will create the foundation in honor of Harold and Lucas. Their legacy will live on through the love and help we can offer to others. The lawyer smiled, satisfied. I'm glad to hear that, Maya. The first step is to formalize the foundation and start planning its activities. I will count on you for that. Maya left the office with a new purpose. The pain of loss still accompanied her, but now she had a direction. Looking up at the sky, she took a deep breath and remembered Mr. Harold's words, "Happiness is a legacy we must build every day." And that was exactly what she intended to do.